Okay, you ready, Ben?
I am ready. Yep. Off mute.
Okay, great.
Tana Bahu Yomed Rabbi Shimon Ba'ale Stalkum in Alma.
It has been-
Miloy.
Everyone can hear?
Yes.
Okay, great. It has been taught on that day when the companions gathered in the house of Rabbi Shimon, and he was arranging his affairs to depart from this world.
It's Kanashu Chavraya L'Bei Rabbi Shimon. V'Havakame Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Abba Shar Chavraya.
And they gathered with him, his sons, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Abba, and the rest of the companions.
Okay, V'Havamalia Besa.
And the house was filled.
Zakef Einai Rabbi Shimon V'Chamad Ismailai Besa.
And Rabbi Shimon lifted his eyes and he saw that the house was full.
Bacha Rabbi Shimon V'Amar.
Rabbi Shimon cried and he said,
B'Zimna Achar Karabena B'Bei Mare.
at another time, in an earlier time when we were in the house of the master,
Hava
of
Rabbi
the
Pinchas Ben Yar.
sick bed. In
Hava
other
Rabbi
words, there was
Pinchas.
an earlier time that Rabbi Shimon was at death's door. And when you're at death's door, you sometimes get a vision of what is in store for you in the next world. And that's where he figured out, so to speak, where he would be in the next world, in Olam Haba. Okay.
Hava Rabbi Pinchas Ben Yar Kamoy.
Then Rabbi Pinchas Ben Yair was his son-in-law in the Talmud and father-in-law in the Zohar. Kind of a little switcheroo there. And he was there at that time with me. And I think at this time already, Pinchas Ben Yair was no longer in this world. While I was there, I was selecting my place. And now at that point, they could have taken me, but they didn't. They gave me an extension on my life until now. When I returned, fire was whirling in front of me, and it's never stopped. And no person could come into my presence unless they first asked for permission, and it was granted. And now I see that the fire of the Shekhinah went out. And because of that, it's like a free-for-all here. Everyone's just come in because they don't have to ask for permission. And they were sitting down. Rabbi Shimon opened up his eyes and he saw the fire swirling around the house. So the fire came back. The Shekhinah came back. So it's interesting because, there is a concept in Medrash and Talmud that talks about the day of death is while the person is still alive, the torch, right here is a fire, is like a torch, is literally being passed to the next person, leader. So even before the person dies, a certain light goes off. So in a sense, this light going off is that midrashic symbol of the death of Rabbi Shimon, the impending death. Because he not only did God know that he was going to die, he himself knew, which is kind of rare because usually even like it says David, who wanted to know when he was going to die, wasn't told when he would die. So it's a rarity, but he knew. But the symbolism here of it going back on is that his death is not just the light predeceasing him, but it's the light going out, making way for an even greater light, which is going to only be for the day till he actually does die. Okay.
Nafku kulu v'ishta'aru Rabbi Elazar b'rei Rabbi Abba v'shar chavra yasvu abrai.
They all left because remember, you can't just be in his presence without permission. And now that the fire is back, all the stragglers or the whoever, the Amcha, they left, except Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Abba. They were like, that's his son, that's one of his right-hand people.
Amar Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Elazar Beret.
Rabbi Shimon said to his son, Rabbi Elazar, go out and see if Rabbi Yitzchak is here. We actually, because I am his guarantor. We actually did the story a year or two ago where Rabbi Yitzchak was very sick, and one of the people took him or something to Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon said, went up into heaven and interceded on his behalf. But he was told at that time that he was granted like a lease on life, but the Rebbe Shimon would bring him back as like like what's the word for a guarantor? Something is whatever the word is.
Surety.
Surety, yeah.
That's a word they use here in the English.
Yeah.
He was like a bailor of he had to return he was like a shomer.
Yeah. Okay, so he was saying to bring Reb Yitzchak here because we're going to be both. It's time for him to die as well as me. Tell him to return to me happy as his share.
Okay, yeah. Come Rabbi Shimon v'Yosef v'chayach v'chadeh.
Rabbi Shimon got up and sat down. So notice how many contrasts there are here. The light goes off, the fire comes back. Everyone was there, everyone goes out. Then he's going to start bringing certain select people back in. He gets up, he sits down. Okay, all of these things are symbols of a movement from one extreme to the other, which actually isn't very extreme. Getting up, sitting down, fire, not fire, but it's the opposite. So on some level, the Idra Zuta is the opposite of what we think death is. We think death is the end. He sees death as the climax, as a celebratory state. We think that it's a bad day, but in fact, it's on some level, it's a very happy day. But on the same time, it is happy and sad. So there's all of the contrasts, the marked differences are being foreshadowed in this section here. Go on.
He's more active in death than most people are in life.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Rabbi, there's a footnote which I've read before about Rabbi Shimon choosing who, or being told who he's going to be next to in Gan Eden or whatever. And the name is Ahijah of Shiloh.
That's the Baal Shem Tov's teacher and the Elijah's teacher. Achia Shiloni. Yeah, it's one of the biblical prophets. Yeah. In fact, that was one of the reasons that the Vilna Gaon didn't appreciate the Baal Shem Tov, because the Baal Shem Tov said that his teacher was Achia Hashiloni, the same person that you're reading about in the note. And what the Vilna Gaon felt is there was a historical Masorah. And I don't just mean it historically, I mean the idea, I think Daniel and I have talked about this, is there's a tradition of who comes before who, right? Historically, the Mishnah is before the Gemara, and the Nevi'im are before the Tanaim, right? And Moshe is before the Nevi'im, and so on and so forth till the Rishonim and the Achronim, right? So the Vilna Gaon felt that the Baal Shem Tov was saying that he could uproot the whole traditional order of the Masorah, of the tradition being handed down, and he felt that that's like, I wouldn't say kfira, I would say maybe some version of For the Vilna Gaon, that was some version of Kfira or something like that. Of course, the Vilna Gaon really did the same thing in a way by by editing the Talmud and things like that, and the Shulchan Aruch, and trying to,
There's also a story of a maskil walking in on the Vilna Gaon, and he said to him, "I can see like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai on one side of you, and Elijah the prophet on the other side of you, right?" And he was ordered thrown out of the room. But the key about the story is that the Vilna Gaon didn't deny that that happened.
Yeah. I mean, the Vilna Gaon supposedly, one of the claims is that he was offered by whichever mystical being to teach him the secrets of the Torah and like save him many years of learning and give it to him as a gift, a heavenly gift. And he refused. And he's like, I'm going to do this on my own. I don't want to share it with some even heavenly being. So, I mean, that's its own parsha, how the Vilna Gaon felt like it was advantageous to do the work on your own. But yet when it came to the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov was like a scoundrel for you. And it wasn't just that he should have worked harder. It's that he was somehow offending the order of things. So it's more of a Vilna Gaon thing. But one of the great paradox, talk about paradox, that's probably why I brought in the Vilna Gaon, is the Vilna Gaon is also like this very paradoxical figure. A lot of people who are studying him say, on the one hand, he's like this, he holds himself out as the paradigm of the status quo, but he is really anything but the status quo. So that's another kind of figure that's, when you think you figured him out, the Vilna Gaon is like the guy who's protesting the Hasidim because they want to make change. But in his own way, he created plenty of change. So it's an interesting, but that gets back to another thing. And I mentioned that in my rant last week. Maybe that's why Daniel said you heard that you missed something, because the only thing you missed is me ranting about other rabbis. And I felt so guilty afterwards, but in my little rant, one of the things I noticed about a great Kabbalist, I say great Kabbalist, I wasn't so impressed, but one of the things he was able, but he's very impressive at the same time. I was impressed and I wasn't impressed, because like I just said, it's about opposites. It's getting up, getting down. It's these polarities. One of the things that I noticed in this great Kabbalist that I also, I'm telling you, that they say about the Vilna Gaon, is that this great Kabbalist was more Haredi than almost anyone I've ever met. I didn't meet him face to face. I was in a room with him teaching a group of like 100 Hasidim, and I felt that his message was way too, like he was, like there are people who believe in Kollel. This guy was saying, drop out of, quit your job in B&H and move to Israel, not because you're a Zionist, because these were Hasidim, and we're not Zionists, but because you have to dedicate your life to serving God, and you have to go to the better place to serve God, which is in Israel. And I just kind of felt like, wow, these people have 7, 8 kids. They could hardly make a living as it is, and I felt it was like not responsible. But upon further reflection, it reflects on a lifestyle that many people think is important. Just whatever you need to do to just study and learn Torah and daven, that's the most important thing. Except usually we tell that to people before they go to work. Once they've already gone to work, it's like me telling you guys to not work anymore. It's a coronavirus. Take advantage of the fact that you're not working anymore. Just resign totally and go to Eretz Yisrael and learn. And maybe I should. Maybe his message was right, and I just wasn't ready to hear it. But the point is that this same guy who's like Haredi on steroids also paradoxically says certain things that are bordering on heresy. How does he get away with it? It's because he's so super religious and so like mainstream. I don't want to even say mainstream, so extreme in his religiosity that nobody will pay attention to when he says things that are slightly or actually heretical. So that's, again, the same thing. If you want to say a big chiddush, you have to be more firm than anyone else. You can't come out as like a Jewish renewal person and say a chiddush. You can, but nobody will care. If you want it to be accepted in the Torah community, you have to first like establish your credentials as being beyond by the book. And then you can say a chiddush that's off the charts, problematic in every other way. Anyway, you guys, can you carry on for a minute without me? I just need to get a water. I didn't drink water with dinner, and I had a very spicy dinner, and it's hitting me now. So carry on for a minute.
Okay.
Zev, read the notes, okay? Zev, can you read the notes? You're on mute.
Yeah, I got it. So I'll start from the top. Note 1. It has been taught. Here begins the Idra Zuta, the small assembly. This composition describes the final gathering of Rabbi Shimon and the companions as the master prepares to depart from this world. Now he reveals the deepest secrets concerning the divine configurations, various divine configurations. The placement of Idra Zuta in the Zohar's commentary on the Torah portion Hazinu, which features the Song of Moses, indicates the parallel between the last words and death of Moses and that of Rabbi Shimon. On the comparison and contrast between Rabbi Shimon and Moses, he cites a lot of places. Then there's a note on arranging his affairs. The Aramaic phrase Mesader Miloi can be construed as arranging his words, namely the secrets he wished to reveal. And then the note on the other time he was on his sickbed, Rabbi Shimon had been on the verge of death, already selecting his place in paradise when his life was was mercifully extended until now. Ever since Rabbi Shimon returned to earthly life, no one has dared enter his presence without permission. And then there's the point that David mentioned about selecting his place in Gan Eden next to the Navi. And then it says Rabbi Pinchas, son of Yair, a 2nd century rabbi who lived in Palestine, was renowned for his saintliness and ability to work miracles. In the Zohar, he is a revered member of Rabbi Shimon's circle. Such special recognition is to be expected since, according to Talmud Shabbos 33b, Rabbi Pinchas was the son-in-law of Rabbi Shimon. However, the Zohar elevates Rabbi Pinchas further, transforming him into Rabbi Shimon's father-in-law. Whereas according to rabbinic literature, Rabbi Pinchas outlived Rabbi Shimon, and the account below, Rabbi Pinchas had already died. And then there's a note when he saw that the fire was coming back. That is, he saw the divine presence, which becomes visible at death. And it says, "See in the name."
By the way, I want to stop you there for a second. Let's talk about note 4. It's funny, you almost skipped it, Zeb, right? You're like,
No, I was going to finish note 4 there.
Okay, finish it then.
So it says in the name of Rabbi Dosa, Scripture states, "No human can see me and live. In their lifetime they do not see, but in their death they do see."
Okay, so it's like of all the notes, that didn't seem that important, but that's like really explaining the whole section and where it is in the Zohar. You know, I gave an introduction to the Zohar class to the yeshiva. We have a yeshiva. It's hyper focused on halacha l'maisa, but they're Chabad guys, so I figure I could probably give them like some hacks on Zohar because they already know Chabad Hasidus. So with teaching them a couple nuances of how the Zohar works, they can basically access the Zohar with the commentaries, with books like the Masik Midvash and Danny Matt's Zohar. They'll like be swimming in it in no time. And it's great because that's, they already did a lot of the work. And one of the things I was telling them is it's always a problem when you study Zohar on the Parsha to come up with the Dvar Torah on the Parsha from the Zohar. Because the connections are tenuous. And they understand in Hasidus, some of the Rebbeim have a mimer that starts off with a pasuk in the Parsha, and then 40 pages into the mimer, like, and that's the answer to the question that we asked 40 pages ago about this pasuk. I'm like, what? Like it's the way I learned it in yeshiva is the question ostensibly is just an excuse for the mimer, which is only tenuously connected to the question, and then refitting it back into the pasuk at the end. So it's hard to make it Dvar Torah. So here it's even further exacerbated. This is in Parshas Ha'azinu, right? We basically this is the Idra Zuta is practically it's not the conclusion of the Zohar, but it's almost the conclusion of the Zohar. There's a little bit of Ha'azinu that goes on after the Idra concludes, but for all practical purposes, the Idra Zuta is the closing out of the Zohar. So the question is, what is this whole thing to do with the Zohar and Parshas Ha'azinu? I think Danny or somebody mentions that, the answer is that Moses dies in Parshas Ha'azinu and Rabbi Shimon dies in the Idra Zuta, so that's the connection. But I think this note is the real answer. It's a little bit that they both die, but the real answer is that we end on a high note, so to speak, for the Zohar, and it says about Moses in the Sifra. It says, "No human can see me and live." That was the response that God said to Moses, that no one can see me and live. The implications, the Medrash there says, is that in death or the day of death, you can see God, or as you're kind of passing from this world into the next world, you get to see God, to Moses. So in that sense, this is the epitome of seeing, which is what is Zohar. It's radiance, but it's also the vision of the illuminated, so to speak, which is what? Rabbi Shimon, which is when? Today, Lag BaOmer, the day of his death. By the way, it's Yom Sheni Shel Galiyot. We're celebrating the second day of Lag BaOmer here in New York.
That's
we
good.
deserve 2 days. Okay, so that's a little bit about why that note is it's small in size, but it really cannot be emphasized enough, the importance of that note. Okay, because that's really why the Idra Zuta is so important and why it's the ending of the Zohar in Parshas Ha'azinu, and why it's called the Zuta, why it's called small when it's nothing small about it.
Didn't we talk about this before, Rabbi, where the threshing floor, right?
Yes.
Roughly equals, so just as the ancient mystics had the Heichel, the broad palace, the broad halls of God's palace and the small halls of God's palace, doesn't it roughly equal the Heichel going into the temple, and then so the small one would be the Holy of Holies?
Maybe. That's a good one. That's an original, and it's so good because usually I only expect gematrias from you, David. So when I get something like that, that's not a gematria, even though it has to do with numbers, but I appreciate it even more because I'm not good at math, so I don't have to start was that math good? Because I can't follow. Where's my calculator? So that was good, especially good. Yeah, I like that. Good.
Is there
Because words mean so much, because as soon as somebody hears the little guy it means like it's not important. It's like a lightweight, but it doesn't really always mean that. Here it's the little gathering, and yet it's got so much to offer. So yeah, anything we can do to like shed light on this, and that's a great one, David. I appreciate that.
I've also considered that it's like a little euphemistic, like maybe it is the bigger one, but we don't want to make the Idra Rabbah feel bad, so we call it big, like like Kiddush Rabbah isn't. It's like the lesser Kiddush, but we call it Kiddush.
Interesting one, yeah. Now, also you have to remember there were more. The literal meaning of Rabbah is there were bigger because it was more people, and though a bunch of the people didn't make it, they died in the Idra Rabbah in the aftermath of that revelation, they died. So there were less of them by this time, but it's got to be a little bit more than just that, I think. Okay, let's continue.
Is the explanation of like in the world to come where placement, like he's saying, oh, I'm going to be near this one or that one. Essentially, in this world, we talk about the hierarchy is based on the chronological order. The further back you are, I guess you're sort of higher up because you're closer to the giving and the receiving of the Torah. But in the world to come, the concept of that, the same concept we have here of time in the world to come is based on space or place, because it's how close what I guess was mentioned before, which is like we never see God, but in the world to come we do. So depending on where you are or who you're next to, you'll see more, or you're going to see less.
Absolutely. Your real estate, meaning who your neighbor is that's another one. We say imi b'mechitzati, like a great tzaddik will occasionally like promise one of their disciples that you're going to be with me. You're going to be in my room, so to speak. You're going to be my roommate in heaven. And what it means, now you have this funny Louis C.K. bit about marriage where he's like, when people get married nowadays, they're like, okay, we're going to be together in the next lifetime. We're going to be together in heaven. He's like, no religion talks about the next lifetime. They talk about right now. And yet everyone, not that Louis C.K. is a big expert on what religion doesn't say, but the truth is that there is this idea of your mystical partner, so to speak, in Gan Eden, and it's not a sexual marital thing per se. It's like a soul. It's like this thing with Pinchas Ben Yair and Rabbi Yitzchak that they have their kind of their place together, So yeah, and that means that they're going to be elevated through Rabbi Shimon.
Yeah.
They're getting a little upgrade.
Yeah.
Okay, note number 5.
This is on being a surety for Rabbi Yitzchak. Years earlier, Rabbi Yitzchak was on the verge of death when Rabbi Shimon interceded with God and saved his life. In order to do so, Rabbi Shimon pledged himself as a surety, promising to bring Rabbi Yitzchak along with him when his own time would come. Rabbi Yitzchak is fortunate to now be departing the world together with his master. For the earlier episode, and it cites where in the Zohar you can find that.
Okay, one more. Rabbi Shimon
One more.
rose.
Rabbi Shimon got up and sat down. He was about to begin, but then he noticed that most of the companions had left when the fire whirled through the house.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm reading it more like it's this the contrast. Okay. He laughed aloud, saying, "Where are the companions?"
Rabbi
Elazar got up and brought them in, and they sat before him. Rabbi Shimon raised his hands and he offered a prayer, and he was joyous, and he said, "Those companions who were present at the threshing house, the earlier Idra Rabbah, will convene here." They all left, and only that remained was his son, Rabbi Elazar, his son Rabbi Abba, his son Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and the son of Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Chia. So 6 of them when you include Rabbi Yitzchak. Just then Rabbi Yitzchak entered, who they had went to call. So let's talk for a moment. Why 6? 1, 2,
Uh,
3,
because
4, 5, 6.
If you include Rabbi Shimon, there were 10 at the Idra Rabbah, and if you're including Rabbi Shimon here, there's 7 at the Idra Zuta.
Okay,
So
good.
this parallels the sphere.
The 10 sphere. Okay, great. I'm sure he says that in the note. I didn't have a chance
But
to read.
there isn't there between then and now, Zev, a place where 2 of them die, right?
Yeah, a few of them.
Just I think it's 2, but I'm not. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
Well,
we're
we'll see in
missing
the
we're
notes.
missing 3 from the Idra Rabbah.
Yeah. Okay. So well, I might as well read the notes since we're talking about the notes, right? Go ahead. Number 7.
Namely, so the companions who were present at the threshing house, namely those who participated in the earlier gathering, the Idra Rabbah. During that event, 6 of the companions proved their mystical ability and stamina, but 3 others died. Now the experienced companions are invited to hear Rabbi Shimon's final words. The term threshing house renders Bei Idra. The word Idera means a threshing floor, a barn, a chamber. In Shir Hashirim Rabbah, the Sanhedrin is described as an Idera de Azara, a threshing floor of enlightenment or admonishment, because the members of the Sanhedrin sat in semicircular rows resembling the half shape of a threshing floor. It says in Mishnah Sanhedrin, the Sanhedrin was arranged like a half of a circular threshing floor so that they could see one another. And then in Shir Hashirim Rabbah, Rabbi Yochanan describes a nighttime study as the threshing floor of Torah. In the titles Idra Rabbah and Idra Zuta, the word Idra, technically Idera, is often understood as assembly convocation, though the sense of threshing place still pertains because the companions gather to thrash out secrets. Still, the more general use of the term in Zohar, I want to walk behind you and learn some of those sublime words that you taste every day from the holy Idra. Compared to the statement of David ben Yehuda HaChassid, this secret is clear to anyone who has entered the threshing house. On the various connotations of the term Idera, and then he cites a number of places.
Excuse me.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, the word threshing floor is going to obviously throw off a lot of people to think what, like his wife said, meet the guys in the barn. I don't want you coming in here with their dirty boots, you know. So it's obviously not simply that. It's
But again,
this
isn't the
idea.
threshing floor meant to be the Temple Mount? Aren't there a bunch of stories about how the Temple
Two
Mount was
brothers or something? No.
used as a threshing floor?
I don't know.
And the threshing house also plays a role in the story of Ruth, right?
That it does. Yeah. That is definitely something. But again, you have to realize that it would almost be like an expression that we use today, a colloquial word like a touchdown, which would be used, or the 50-yard line or something like that, some expression or playing Carnegie Hall, which represents something more than just actually playing Carnegie Hall or scoring a touchdown. So at that time, the idea or the word threshing floor represented something more than just a physical space where they would, thresh the whatever produce they were threshing. So yes, David, it either meant something like the Sanhedrin, or a mystical version of a Sanhedrin, where people thrash out ideas, so to speak. So
I'm reminded, I think it was in Sifra Ditznew, so there's like the parallel about the guy who only eats grain kernels that haven't been ground up. And then like the townspeople try to show him
Out of the
bread and
cookies
cake
and the challah and the French toast.
and he doesn't like it because he only wants like the unground kernels. And then they point out that he's like missing the point. So like without the threshing floor to like grind out the kernels, like you're in the position of that guy. I don't know.
Now, David and Zev, if we take a step further, we could argue, because the point has been made, that the tree of knowledge, and by extension, maybe even the tree of life, was a chita, was a wheat stalk. That was somehow also a tree. So everything that we're talking about could either be making bread or the tikkun of the Eitz Hadas, the fixing of the Eitz Hadas and turning it into the Eitz HaChaim, which is all
So it's
about
very cool.
the tree. Yeah. Okay, let's go on.
Arahachi all Rabbi Yitzchak, Amalei Rav Shimon Kamiyos Cholakach Kamachedu Baili Tosvilach Bahayoma.
Rabbi Yitzchak came in. Rabbi Shimon said to him, "How wonderful is your share? How much joy is destined to be added to you today?" Imagine, God forbid, imagine as a rabbi, I walk into somebody who, the doctors say he's going to die, and I say, Mazel Tov. Good news.
You're in great shape.
This is going to be the best day of your life. Like, why? Well, because you have a great place in Gan Eden. So, I'm laughing about it because we're on such a low level. For me, it's like there are certain fantasies that I might have, but this isn't one of them. To be able to like go and visit somebody and say, you know what, I know that this is going to be your greatest day because you're going you've got a great Gan Eden in front of you. That's not even a fantasy I have to be able to like see that. So when I read this, I'm like, okay, this is how far you're talking about sitting, getting up and getting down. That's how far this is away from me. And I don't know about you guys. Maybe Yossi, Reb Yossi, how does this, you're on a higher level than me. You tell me, Reb Yossi, how does this resonate with you?
I think it's there's all these things about, if you want, those individuals that didn't mind that they were going to die. I mean, even like I'm blanking out. Is it who's the guy who one of the leaders of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising who said that he could die happy because he had seen Jews with guns?
And you're a Democrat.
No, but it's kind of like,
I know.
you know what I mean.
There's a context for it. I know.
No, but sometimes there are things worth dying for.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is it, Mordechai?
Anilevich, Mordechai Anilevich. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of, and by the way, I should just, oh no, this is one of those confession times. I shouldn't say this, but actually my father was a Beitar and Irgunist. So his Rebbe was Jabotinsky and Menachem Begin. They were the ones, that was his ideal of that, and that's not my political ideology, but I grew up with this mythology, this martyrology, which was, if you want, the extreme right, which was the counter narrative in that whole period in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, which was, these people are the weirdos. Now, of course, they're mainstream. They've taken over the center of everything. But getting back to it, are there, what's the wonderful, I'm sorry, I can't remember the example of the individual who literally he's dying and he says, I think he's rolled in the Torah, he's burnt. And he says, I see the letters right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tyridian.
Is that who it is?
Rabbi, whatever, he was the father of Brurian.
Who is it? Who?
Tyridian, was it Ben Tyridian?
Yeah.
He was one of the 10 martyrs.
Yeah, it's just, and I'm always surprised because I
He saw
would
the
think,
letters. He saw the letters rising from the scroll.
yeah, I would think the martyrology would be a way of saying people, oh, I don't want to do this, but religions seem to grow with martyrology.
Look at Christianity. I mean, that's their origin story, and they're huge.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't the angle that like a person on on this level is basically has their whole life is about trying to achieve the best place they can there. So the only reason they really don't want to die is because they're not insured. They don't know. Maybe I need to do more. Maybe my place is not good enough. But once you guarantee me or assure me that I have a great place, then see you later. That was the whole point of living in the first place.
The other thing is it evokes two things, Rabbi. One of them is that in the time to come, when we are resurrected, is that the righteous go within the skin of the Leviathan and whatever. So on one level, it evokes kind of who's my neighbor in the world to come. It evokes stadium seating, whereas two people have seats to see for the show. And then another level where you're saying is that, they could be neighbors millions of miles apart.
Well, that's a whole nother question. If we're still jockeying for position in, the afterlife, like the hierarchy that we have here in this world, is that just, we're just trading places, but we're going to have the same idea there also, which is there's this that's paradoxically answered by a medrash that says we're going to be dancing in like the circles, like in the vineyards, and like these metaphorically circular macholot, they're called, which would be the equivalent of like a crop circle, talk about the crops and the threshing floors, where we're dancing, well, not just the empty circle, but like we're dancing in a field in a circle, which means a circle represents equality, right? Not hierarchy. But on the other hand, it says, but each one will be burnt from the circle of their neighbor, which means we still have to create distance from one another, that even the mystical union is not one with the all, to the point that everyone loses their individuality.
Isn't Ben trying to tell us something anyway with the waves and the Gilgalim and the rolling waves coming in? Isn't this a statement about the world to come?
The rolling waves.
I'm talking about Ben's screensaver.
Oh, Ben. I was
was
about to go on and on about it, but
yeah, I haven't been inspired by the Zohar. I'm just being inspired by my background.
Yeah, isn't there also that image of I don't know where the image comes from, but that at the end, all the Hasidim will be dancing around God and saying "do, do, do."
Yeah, there is. Sounds like a Medrash and a Reb Zalman story. That sounds like a Jewish story that Reb Zalman told. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back into the text here.
Yosef Reb Abba Basar Kisvay Reb Elazar Kameh.
Rabbi Abba sat behind his back, and Rabbi Elazar sat in front of him.
Rabbi Shimon.
We always know Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Elazar are like his Yachin Boaz. They're like there's always the greatest person always has a right hand man and a left hand man. So they are Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Shimon said, "The hour is in my favor. And I want to enter without shame into the world that is coming." Here are holy words that I have not revealed until now. I wish to reveal in the presence of the Shekhinah, so that I have left this world in deficiency.
Ba'ad ka'an tamirin hava b'liboy,
Until now, they were hidden within my heart
l'me'al behula omad aseh.
to enter with them into the world that is coming. It reminds me of the Talmudic expression, v'tamuda biyado, that Ashrei mi shabala khan, praiseworthy is the person who reaches the afterlife, v'tamudo biyado. Their Torah study is in their hands, which is very much like a yeshivish expression of like Talmud Biyado is like probably the name of a pirush by now, like a handy copy of some Torah commentary, because you could go around, you could travel with it. But what that means is that there's two ways of studying. There's the way I study 90% of the time, which is I'm paying attention to a Gemara Shir and I'm making breakfast. I'm falling asleep. You guys have no idea how much Torah I listen to in the middle of my sleep. I put on the tape in the night. I go to sleep. I wake up. I put on the same tape. I make breakfast. I put on the same recording. And I heard it 3 times and I know like 5% of it. That's not Talmud Biyado. That's not, having it in hand. Having it in hand means like, you sit down, you pay attention, you take notes, you review it. But that's the yeshivish version of the proper way of learning, which I am guilty of not doing enough of. But the Zoharic version is what will I be able to take into the next world so that I won't be embarrassed. It's not just a question of information, of downloading into your mind the correct version of the Gemara, the good pshat and Rashi, the question on Tosfos, and the answer. That's good too, but this is this idea of you were put here in this world to reveal a secret. That's your purpose. And if you didn't reveal that last secret on your last day of your life, there's embarrassment. You didn't fulfill that. So that's coming before God with Torah in the Zohar is revealing what was concealed.
Rabbi Yichtov, Rabbi
I'll arrange it like this. Rabbi Abba will write. So technically, Rabbi Abba is the scribe. So some people like to say, no, it's not Rabbi Shimon who wrote the Zohar. It's Rabbi Abba. Here it says clearly. I think it says it a couple other times, or at least one other time that Rabbi Abba is writing, maybe more than twice. So, okay, Rabbi Abba is writing. Rabbi Elazar, my son, will repeat it because again, the Zohar is in the style of the Mishnah and the Tosefta and the Brisa and the Gemara, which is it's an oral tradition, which by the way, I'm not commenting on the authorship of the Zohar, but it makes sense that the Talmud was not, the theories are coming out, more and more academics are saying the Mishnah, the Brisa, there's being claimed that they were remembered by their so-called authors, but not written until later, so it kind of makes sense to say Rabbi Shimon is the teacher. Rabbi Abba is taking notes. Notes doesn't mean he's writing it literally down. So whatever that means, by the time we come up with the Zohar, there's a plausible way of saying, yes, there was a teacher named Rabbi Shimon. There was a son who remembered what he taught, and there was another person who took notes on what he taught, like the Mishnah, like the Talmud. So you're with me? You like that?
Yeah, because I've often wondered about this, because if Rabbi Shimon with, I believe, Rabbi Elazar are basically hiding out for all those years,
yeah,
what the heck are they doing? And if that isn't what's happening, then how does this get written down? And then how does it get to Moses de Leon?
Yeah. These are good questions that I'm not even going to try to answer right now. Um, you know, I remember one of these kind of like Chovevei rabbis met me in Starbucks, and he saw I was reading Danny Matt's Zohar, and he said, "Do you really think Rabbi Shimon wrote the Zohar?" I said, "Actually, no. God wrote it." Just to freak him out a little bit, you know. I didn't mean like, oh God. He actually had a good sense of humor. He laughed. He didn't get upset. Some people get really upset about that type of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
But Danny Matt, when he visited us, Rabbi, when he did Kabbalah and asked a similar question, he was prepared to say that he didn't discount the idea of automatic writing. Was that, in other words, that Moses de Leon's hand was kind of guided from other.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's not, yeah, there's a lot of things to say about it, but
I think the idea that Moses de Leon wrote all of it is no more credible than the idea that he wrote none of it. Like they're both of those ideas make no sense.
I mean, the latest Kabbalah scholarship on who wrote the Zohar as of I think 5 years ago, when I think I used to study with Nathaniel, he was much more into this thing, is that there was a number of layers that preceded earlier layers. They don't think it's that much earlier, but a little bit earlier than Moses de Leon, and then Moses de Leon and a handful of people were involved in it. It's no longer seen by many scholars as the work of one person,
But it's also there's precedence for this in the broader community. You have the story of the fall of Troy probably occurred around the same time as the Exodus from Egypt, but Homer didn't come along until about 400 or 500 years later, and so this whole concept in the ancient world, which we don't have today, except maybe in Ireland or with Eskimos or whatever, this whole concept of bardic tradition, of where basically stories come alive within a person and they're literally passed from generation to generation.
So we do have it or we don't have it?
Well, it is very unusual. You get it maybe in some outlying places in Ireland and maybe through some indigenous peoples and whatever. But it is not like it used to be before the invention of the telephone or the printing press.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look here. Rabbi Abba rose. My son will repeat the rest of the companions who will meditate in their heart. Rabbi Abba rose from behind his back. He said, "Rise up, my son. For someone else will sit in the place," meaning a mystical being will. I remember one time I sat down in a chair at the Carlebach Shul, and the guy said, "No, that's Shlomo's seat. That's after Shlomo passed away." I'm like, "I think you're actually sitting in his seat now." Okay, so Rabbi Elazar rose. Rabbi Shimon enwrapped himself and sat down. Right, that was fine. We're gonna. A judge who's about to judge enwraps himself in their talit and then begins. So he's about to do his thing. Okay, read the notes, before we continue. From 8, I guess.
From 8, okay. They all left. The others who had earlier filled the house now left, and there remained only 5 of the companions who survived the Idra, plus the newly arrived 6th one, Rabbi Yitzchak. The next note is, "I want to enter without shame, having revealed as much wisdom on earth as he could, otherwise he would be departing deficiently. Then note 10, Rabbi Abba will write, and it notes the other places in the Zohar that it mentions that Rabbi Abba is the scribe
Oh, how many times?
twice.
Okay.
And,
Wasn't
and
that off.
one of those other times is also here in Idra Zuta.
Okay, okay, so I'm not that off. Hey, my memory's working. I didn't even look at the note.
Rabbi 11, someone else is Rabbi 11, note 11. Someone else is going to sit in that seat. Apparently, this refers to one of the souls of the righteous coming from paradise. Note 12, Rabbi Shimon wrapped himself in his cloak in preparation for revealing secrets of divinity. This description derives from a famous rabbinic story in Chagiga. Once Rabbi Yochanan, son of Zakkai, was riding on a donkey traveling on the road, and Rabbi Elazar, son of Arach, was guiding the donkey behind him. Rabbi Elazar said to him, "Master, teach me one chapter of the account of the chariot from Ezekiel's vision." Rabbi Yochanan, replied, "Have I not taught you, nor may one expound an account of the chariot in the presence of one unless he is a sage who understands on his own," which is also from Chagiga. He said to him, "Master, permit me to say before you one thing that you have taught me." He said, "Speak." Immediately, Rabbi Yochanan, son of Zakkai, dismounted from the donkey and enwrapped himself and sat upon the stone beneath the olive tree. Rabbi Elazar, said to him, "Master, why did you dismount from the donkey?" He replied, "Is it possible that you are expounding the account of the chariot, and Shekhinah is with us, and the ministering angels accompany us, and I should ride on the donkey?" Immediately, Rabbi Elazar, son of Arach, began expounding the account of the chariot, and fire descended from heaven and encompassed or intertwined with all the trees of the field, whereupon they all opened in song.
Okay, pretty powerful stuff.
I'm sorry, is there a footnote to that footnote? I kind of was with it until the fire descending and all opened in song. What is that supposed to tell me?
It's meant to be happy, isn't it? When fire descends, it normally kills Nadav and Abihu.
It's not happy.
Well, in this case, the fire sounds more like a psychedelic fire. Like the trees were dancing, which basically means that one of the most usual sign of an intense divine revelation is a fire, and often the fire kills things, like Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar in the story of the Gemara. They have X-ray, they have like Superman like vision, and it's a fire, and it's harmful when they come out of the Mira, out of the cave. Other times, rabbis teach about the Ma'aseh Merkava, a fire like comes up somehow and kills all the birds that fly overhead. So here it's like one of the few times where like it's intertwining with the trees in the field, and yet it's all good. So that's a pretty high level, which
Kind of like a
often
burning
they
bush.
can't get to in the Talmud, in the stories.
It's kind of like a burning bush.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You're noticing something, Daniel, because usually the stories in the Talmud of Rabbi Shimon don't jive with the type of things we're talking about here in the Zohar. They don't really jive. We find stretched ways to make them come together. Gives a lot of rabbis and professors lectures to give, but it's not an obvious connection. It's really a disconnection. This story actually, which is not about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it's about his teacher's teachers. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was a young man in the story who was he was the troublemaker between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua. That was the topic of my Shabbat Gadol talk, was the backstory to some of the protagonists of the Haggadah, like Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Akiva, and the political story in the context of Rabbi Yoshua not listening to Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Gamliel disrespecting Rabbi Yoshua that led to Rabbi Gamliel's temporary being taken away from his position as
Impeached.
What's impeached? Yeah. Who instigated it? Who was the troublemaker there? A young man. It doesn't say his name till the end of the story, till it's all resolved. Who was it? Rabbi Shimon, which is very problematic because it doesn't make him really look good, and it purposely doesn't tell his name till the story has a kind of happy ending where Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is not totally, after he's elevated, and they take Rabbi Gamliel back. Rabbi Gamliel is the senior Nasi, and then Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is his deputy. So, and then it says, by the way, that guy who made all this trouble, Rabbi Shimon, he was a young man at that time. So, who is the Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who we're talking about here in this note, was the Nasi before this, right? So Rabbi Shimon wasn't even around then in this earlier story. But yet, the Zohar is not about Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch, who actually may have overlapped with Reb Shimon for a tiny bit, but it's with Reb Shimon despite despite all of these strange stories in the Talmud. He's not always. It's almost like he reminds me of Eliyahu Hanavi. If you look into legend about who Eliyahu Hanavi is, he's the person who shows up at the bris and at the seder. He's like the most friendly person. But if you read about him in Tanakh, he's very bitter and depressed often and combative. And yet we take out of him the sweetest things. And that's what happened with Rabbi Shimon also, which leads me to believe that there's hope for all of us. I hope.
He's also the angel sandal thong, right?
That's such a cool name.
Whereas Eliyahu Hanavi is?
Supposedly.
Cool. I think it makes sense that they're like such severe, intense people. Like, the Zohar is such an intense text. Like, why would we think that Shimon would be a laid back guy? Like, he's full of intensity. And like, I think that story makes sense about him.
Okay, good.
And isn't he the guy who, the reason why he's hiding for 12 years with his son is because it's a death sentence against him by the Romans because he said bad things about them.
He did. Right. He said that you're only building your markets because they're for your whores.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. He had nothing good to say about the Romans. So he there you go.
Versus Rabbi Yehuda played it much more cleverly.
Okay, let's go on.
Page
770. He opens saying,
Lo amesim yahalalu ka v'lo kol yordei duma.
Yeah, nor all who go down into Duma, which he's translated as silent, usually hell. So they used to have a place called Duma that was like go to Duma, and that was hell. But he will bless you, Yah, from now on forever.
Maybe that's where doom comes from. Lo amesim yahalalu ka.
You're doomed. You're going to Duma.
You're doomed.
So now he's going to ask, it seems repetitive. You just said that dad don't praise you. Certainly so. So he's explaining that there's a distinction between physically dead and people who are actually physically alive, but yet spiritually dead. Certainly so. Those are called dead. For the blessed and holy one is called living. He dwells amongst those who are called living. not with those called dead.
Sophie the Kruxiv, Velo Kalyar de
The
Duma,
verse that is written, nor will he go down into Duma, silence. All
Chalin
those
the
who
Nachtel
descend to
Duma.
Duma will be drawn into hell.
Shana Inun the Ikon Chayim, the
It's
Kushabaruch
different for those who are
Boy.
living, for the Blessed Holy One desires their glory. Okay, let's do note 13.
According to rabbinic tradition, the wicked, even in their life, are called dead, whereas the righteous, even in their death, are called living. See brachas. Duma, literally silence, designates the silence of death, the netherworld in the Bible. See Psalms 94:17. Were not Hashem a help to me, my soul would have nearly dwelt in Duma. In rabbinic literature, Duma is the angel in charge of souls of the dead. In the Zohar, he retains this role and oversees hell.
That's
It's also the Russian Parliament.
Duma. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
It's also a very steady job. The overseer in hell, you know. Okay, back to the text above. Rabbi Shimon said, how different is this moment from the Idra, the earlier Idra? For in the Idra, the Blessed Holy One, accompanied by those righteous from the Garden of Eden, in other words, the earlier Idra, God came with some angels, but he didn't come with the souls of the people in Gan Eden. As opposed to this current Idra, the Idra Zuta, God came with not all, but many of the righteous souls of the tzaddikim that were in Gan Eden. The Blessed Holy One seeks the honor of the righteous more than his own. How do we know that? It's written by Yeravam, who was offering incense to idols. So Yeravam was a bad guy, big idol worshiper, and worshiping them. But as soon as and God doesn't really do much to him, but as soon as he stretched out his hand against Edo the prophet, it's only when Yeravam hurts a tzaddik, it is written, his hand withered. So then God punishes him. In other words, sometimes God doesn't take offense too easily when people are worshiping idols, which is a big offense, but he doesn't react. But when they hurt another person, particularly if they hurt a righteous person, God does not let that go. Okay. But the point of this is God loves tzaddikim. That's the point. Maybe more than himself. And that fits in well with the idea that God makes a decree and a righteous person nullifies the decree, because God loves them even more than he loves himself sometimes. This is not written because he worshiped idols, but because he stretched his hand out against the prophet, and now the Blessed Holy One seeks their honor, and they are all coming with him. Okay, go ahead and read note 14, Sev.
In the earlier gathering known as the Idra Rabbah, God appeared along with the angels of his chariot throne. Now the souls of the righteous accompany him, and thereby they are honored. Yerovam was the first king of the northern kingdom of Israel. According to the book of Kings, he had golden calves built in Bethel and Dan to dissuade the people from going to the temple in the southern kingdom of Yehuda. In the following chapter of Kings, a prophet from Yehuda comes to Bethel and prophesies the destruction of the altar. It happened when the king heard the word of the man of God that he had proclaimed against the altar in Bethel. Yerovam stretched out his hand above the altar, saying, "Seize him," but the hand he stretched out against him withered, and he could not pull it back. In Kings, the man of God is not named, but he's traditionally identified as Edo.
Now, you know, Edo Aaroni has a biblical name. You might have thought it was like a modern Hebrew name. Here it is. It's the name of a prophet. Okay, let's continue.
Japanese.
Well, yeah, it's also one of the names we share with our Asian, I want to say relatives. I have no idea if we're actually related.
There's a claim, like I saw this very, very bizarre claim on the internet that the Japanese royal family is a lost tribe, or what. It was like really dubious. But
There's an author called Tudor Parfit who wrote a book called The 13th Gate Sev, and he makes that same claim that they're related to the tribe of Zebulun, and there are all these artifacts which nobody's ever seen belonging to the Japanese royal family, which apparently indicates that.
Who's that by?
There's a guy called Tudor Parfit, who's one of these guys who's gone out in search of the lost tribes. He's actually a halfway credible scholar.
Hmm.
From what, not that I'm one to judge, but from what I've been told.
I will have to look into that. He sounds like a perfect speaker for the Carlebach Shul, right, David?
Yeah, I don't think he's a Jew, incidentally, even though he's got, there are none of these. I met one of these people in Prague. She teaches at the, well, she's a researcher at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And it's all to do with, her role in life is to, she's a perfect person for me to meet, Rabbi. She's an English woman called Shalva. I remember her name. But her role in life was to research the claims of African tribes. So people like the Lemba in South Africa, and then there are tribes from Madagascar, and there's obviously, you have the Ethiopian Jews and whatever.
The Igbo.
And the Igbo, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them is, and she researches the claims of these African tribes in order, because there's so many people with the mass migration at the moment who want to go to Israel. And so her role is to research the claims of these tribes, of which she was really cynical about, as to what relationship they could have to the Israelites.
Did she come up with anything of interest, or
Well,
more of, psychological reasons why they?
well, she came up mainly as because was to get the hell out of Africa and into Israel. So that's why she was cynical. But there's there are a lot of tribes in Africa and Kenya right the way through, who've got some little remez in their tradition that that indicates that they have some type of Israelite past. Incidentally, Tudor Parfit's last book, he went in search of the Ark of the Covenant, and his findings are very, very. He ends up in a museum in Harare, which is the capital of Zimbabwe, and his findings are just very bizarre.
Yeah. Apparently there was a thing for arts. There were many different cultures in that time had, and even afterwards, had arcs of their own covenant. Most of them were made out of wood. Like only the
So that these are the tablets which in Ethiopia. So there's this claim that the Ark of the Covenant is in Aksum, okay, which I went to see there, but then in Ethiopia, right the way through Ethiopia, they have these churches which are designed supposedly on the same design as the temple in Jerusalem, and at the center of them all, as you say, which are these tablets, which are wooden.
Aren't your tablets in those days your website?
What's that?
Aren't your tablets in those days your website? So it would make sense that everyone would have, their own app, their brand, their own organization, institution. Well, I need to have my website. I need to have it somewhere. There is nothing else how else do they sort of manifest their manifesto? Pre in the internet.
But having said that, the church in Ethiopia is absolutely fascinating, and it's very ancient, and it's nothing to do with what we know as European Christianity. It really is totally its own tradition.
How are we doing on time? I don't know what.
About 5 after 10.
Okay, so let's wrap up the learning part. We could stay on. Give me a second here. Trying to get to.
Shalva Weil. What's her name?
So why was she a great person for you to meet?
No, because I'm a weirdo, so I like all these sort of strange claim things, and so so when I met her, kind of it was like my idea of a perfect job, right? Is
Oh, okay.
that